Not a jail cell, though.
Yes, Justin, I can see. Yes, I'm up early. I'm in Arizona. So this is commitment. This is what it takes to go to the morning meeting. And I was telling Dan before Mark joins, we always talk about who has commented on seeing us on the morning meeting. And I did an event last night here at the University of Arizona, and the students would come up to me and say, "My dad watches you. My mom watches. She loves the morning meeting." So it was the
All
first
right,
time it was.
we need to mark it young. Hey, it's 9 o'clock. Should we just start? Audra,
Please.
can I begin the
Good
program?
morning, guys. We're live.
All right, good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Casual Friday morning meeting where we didn't really do a countdown. We just rolled kind of right into the program. We have a lot to get to, including the New York Times poll, some from the focus group we did last night with undecided voters in Pennsylvania. I know a lot of people are here to try to figure out who's going to win the election, and that's super important. We're all interested in that. But it keeps saying we need to come through this election with the country as united as possible, no violence, and the losing side understanding why the winning side won, rather than being angry about why the winning side won, understanding it, because that would mean you'd understand your fellow Americans. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with what we forecast last week, which is there's an escalation in tension, and unfortunately for Blue America, there's an asymmetry in what's going on now. We could spend all day, the three of us, trying to get a Democrat on the phone who was super confident, like, we're going to win. We wouldn't succeed in terms of political professionals, members of Congress, strategists. It would take us one call, random dial any Republican in our Rolodex to find someone who said, yeah, I'm pretty confident we're going to win, or more. Okay, that's an asymmetry, just a reality. Some attribute it to cultural differences between the party, and there's something to that. But there's qualitative and quantitative data everywhere you look that things have moved in Trump's direction, and that it will be difficult for her to win, but not impossible. And that is causing a lot of tension in Blue America. And I want everybody, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're here for the first time, you've been here from the beginning, whether you're watching on two-way, please, grace, presumption of grace, and some understanding for your blue friends who are going through a hard time right now. They're not giving up, and they may win, in which case I hope they'll show you some grace. But for now, there is this asymmetry. We're going to talk about why that exists. We're going to run through the schedule in a minute, but New York Times dropped their last poll. It's significant, not just because it's the New York Times as a brand, but it's considered a pretty good poll. And the direction is clear. 103, please. For those of you who haven't seen it, previously Kamala Harris was up in this poll. Now it's a tie. Okay, 48-48 national poll. The conventional wisdom has been, even though it may be false, that if Donald Trump is tied or within a couple points in the national poll, he's going to win. Now the New York Times says possible Kamala Harris could win the Electoral College and lose the popular vote. And we've talked about Trump overperforming from last time in the big blue states that could make him a bigger popular vote winner, but still lose the Electoral College. Possible. Reaction, two reactions I want to show you to that poll. First, Ron Brownstein, 102. He's pretty pro-Harris, but he's a great political analyst. He says that this shows Kamala Harris, the New York Times poll, she's matching Joe Biden with white voters, but she's doing less well with people of color, particularly Latino voters. And that's back to, remember when Harris replaced Biden, and after we saw some initial data, there was a thought, maybe Harris is stronger than Biden in the Sun Belt states, weaker in the battle in the Rust Belt. This poll and other data suggest no, back to clear number one path, Rust Belt states. Okay, Mark Penn, Democratic pollster. Here's his tweet. Important to understand the context here. He's looking at all the polls, not just one poll. Snapshots, underlying changes. Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, private polling show movement for Trump. It's real movement. And it's real movement at the end, which suggests as voters are deciding, it's meaningful. But again, it's still close and she can win. Okay, let's talk about the schedule for today. Okay, we've talked a lot here about Kamala Harris's schedule. I always try to give her the benefit of the doubt. When she starts her day late, when she has very few events, Donald Trump starts his day late. Some days he does nothing. But she's got more to introduce herself to the American people. So that's another asymmetry. Okay, Kamala Harris today is in Texas. She's taping a podcast at 6:25 Central Time, Eastern Time. I don't know what she's doing the rest of the day before then. Maybe she'll pop up places and do some stuff. Her event, her signature event, closing argument. There are three closing arguments for the Harris campaign: abortion rights, economics, and economics can include Social Security and middle class, all that stuff. And then Donald Trump's a fascist and he's unstable. Okay. So this is one of her three big arguments. And every Democrat, every Republican would tell you if she's going to win, abortion would be one of the pillars of her victory. Put that back up, please. Her event with Beyonce and Willie Nelson and talking about abortion rights starts tonight at 9:30 Eastern time on a Friday night up against the World Series. I'm going to pause running through the schedule. Dan, I've not seen anybody else comment on this. I think it's insane. 9:30 Friday night is when you do a document dump that you don't want anybody to see. Someone said to me, maybe that's when Beyonce was free. Well, if that's true, I'd probably tell Beyonce she'll come some other time. Dan, how can you explain the abortion event being at 9:30 on a Friday night?
Yeah. So at this point, there are very few voters left who haven't made up their minds. And one of the groups that the campaign thinks is going to be their key to victory is women between the ages of 18 and 30 who don't have children. And in their opinion, I'm guessing here, the logic of this is they are up. I'm usually asleep at 9:30 on a Friday night. Younger people are not. They are on social media. And so they are going to try to hit them on a Friday night when they're on their phones, when they're out, and Saturday morning when they wake up. This is the content that they are hoping that they see. Because
Brilliant. First explanation I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sean, what do you think?
I think it makes total sense to me. And I hope that they spend the last 10 days doing the same thing.
No, come on, be serious. Be serious.
I know. Look, it's a Friday. I'm tired. I will tell you that I agree with you. I've said this before. I think just showing that you're doing stuff puts other stuff on your schedule, but you're not inspiring the people who have to knock the doors, make the phone calls to say, hey, if the top of the ticket isn't out there doing it, why should I? Why people like us wouldn't be talking about this if they had 5 other things on the schedule? She could have started a pre-program early. She could have met with done a women's roundtable for an hour before that. I mean, there's 20 things that she could have done. Brought cameras into a meeting of young women, gone to a college nearby. I mean, it doesn't take much, and they can be very scripted so that it's not like there's a dangerous event on that. And to Dan's point, why wouldn't you just get a bunch of young women and talk about the threat that it faced? Maybe get them with their moms and talk about how their mothers are concerned for them. So you transcend some generational issues. So it's not, you send a message to older women. You should care about this too, because I mean, I think the signal's horrible.
It's an extremely powerful issue. And as I said, if she wins, it's going to be in part on the backs of this issue. I just don't understand Friday night at 9:30. Colin Allred.
By the way, Mark, this is not the only day this week where she has started not just at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, but
almost
4
every
o'clock,
day.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, almost every day. All right. She does occasionally do like stops at diners and stuff, whatever. Colin Allred, congressman running against Ted Cruz. She's going to be with him today. Interesting choice for him to meet also. Donald Trump, 1:30 Eastern time press conference in Austin. I think Ted Cruz is going to be there because he's going to be with Ted Cruz at some point today. Then he does the Rogan podcast, which is not airing live, I believe. So we'll see it next week. And then he flies to Traverse City, Michigan, 7:30 Eastern time rally. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is in Michigan with Michelle Obama for their first joint event, and Donald Trump is in Pennsylvania. Tim Walz, Friday Night Lights rally. I wrote in the newsletter or the daybook, really, but it's a rally in Scranton, PA at 6 o'clock. J.D. Vance, 2 rallies in North Carolina, one in Rayford at 2:30 Eastern, and the other in Monroe at 6:30 Eastern. Okay, we looked at the polling. As I said, one of the 3 Harris messages at close is Donald Trump's unstable, and he's a threat to democracy, and he's a fascist. Okay. Reporting today, I saw in a paper, I don't remember which one, the campaign says they focus group this, and it's a very effective message to hear Republicans talking about this and to have it be echoed. Last night, some of you have already seen this, we did a focus group with undecided Pennsylvania voters, and I asked them what they thought of this message of Kamala Harris, is that Donald Trump is a fascist. Again, these are undecided voters in Pennsylvania. Please roll 105. Okay. In the last few days, the vice president has started to talk about Donald Trump as a fascist, as someone who's spoken approvingly of Hitler. Raise your hand if you've heard about those comments. Okay. What do folks think? Is that something that's persuasive to you? Is that something that you'll factor into your vote? Linda?
To me, it's horrible that she's saying that about him. If he was saying that about her, everybody would be up in arms. I just don't think that's right.
What other folks think about what the vice president's saying, based on accounts of people who've worked with the President Trump? What do folks think about her making those charges and those characterizations?
She obviously thinks it's going to help her. I don't think it does at all. I don't know why, if it was Kelly who heard the president say that, I'm not saying he did or he didn't. I don't think he'd lie. I think you said that, Mark, on an episode. But I think that he had a responsibility to resign the day that was said, if that's true. I don't think that's the case.
I can't. I think part of the reason why I'm being pushed towards Trump so strongly is that I find that the Democrats and the left just keep going straight to Hitler all of the time with everything. Like it, and if it's not the left pushing Hitler, it's the right pushing Stalin. So it's like we're fighting World War II every single day for every single election. So it's so exhausting. I think it just detracts from, it pushes me away from their position, and it's so hyperbolic that it makes it impossible to have good discussions, and I think it ruins the discourse.
Does anybody think it's valuable or something you want to hear from the vice president? Anybody? Raise your hand if you think this is something that's important for her to be talking about. Anybody? Okay. Bueller? Okay.
Wow.
That's one focus group. Okay, guys, it's one focus group, and it's a focus group. It's not a poll. But I will say this. You will look in vain, I believe, for anything in the media that tells you how do voters feel about this argument. Okay, I just haven't seen it anywhere else. So whose view of this argument would you most like to hear right now? I would argue undecided voters in Pennsylvania. Now, before anybody goes nuts about the group, you'll watch the whole group if you want. It's online. They're mixed. Some of them have voted for Democrats for president. Some of them clearly are more Republican, but they are undecided voters. So whether you want to criticize the group because some have voted for Trump in the past and some are leaning his way, maybe, you're welcome to do that. But they're all undecided voters in Pennsylvania, and you saw how they reacted to the message. Sean.
First of all, thank you for doing that. This is why I think the platform is so great, because we can come with preconceived notions about what messages work and don't, and then you see it and you go, wow. I thought it was fascinating. The first thing that jumped out at me is whether the message was better from her or from surrogates, right? If you're concerned about what Trump officials said, get them to say it, right? So and I know General Kelly won't. He's made it clear he's not going to publicly appear, or at least he said that so far. But some of these other folks, I think you could get. And if I were Harris, I'd say, I thought one of the things she said well at the town hall the other day was, don't listen to me, listen to them. Like, take their words. And they should, again, I always hate saying this, that's how you could be more effective. Say, tonight, I want to hear from, fill in the blank person. But I also think how those respondents communicated what they felt about this, which is, I don't buy it, or I think this is demeaning or dehumanizing, then pivot. But you better go back in real quick and refocus group what is working, because again, all I'd say is, yes, that's not necessarily scientific, but it's pretty telling, because I think we see it a lot. I hear it anecdotally that I don't like the language, or I don't agree with that, or why. I mean, one of the things I heard yesterday echoes what that is, which is, if Kelly was so shocked by this, why did he stick around? Why hasn't he spoken up earlier? And again, I'm not questioning any of that, but I'm just saying that that's the same sentiment that I hear anecdotally as well.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we got the answer to this after the first and only debate between the two of them. I mean, the left and my party was high-fiving that she kicked his hiney up and down the stage because she prosecuted the case of why he is unfit. And what we heard the couple days and week after from undecided voters was it didn't resonate with them. They were frustrated. They were not hearing more from her. And so now to kind of close the campaign by just kind of going to 11 with how awful and unfit Trump is, I have not seen data the last 2 months that is a sufficient way to move undecided voters. And even the soft Haley Republicans, who I think is exactly, those suburbs of Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, there has been no real data other than, to Sean and your point, when the Republicans themselves say it on camera. And I would rather have, General Kelly on stage than Bruce Springsteen saying he's a tyrant, because celebrities saying it, it's kind of funny, but it's not somebody that's going to move an undecided. It moves the base. We get fired up. But
all right. Thank you. Let's clarify. We're not right now discussing whether Donald Trump said these things. We're not discussing whether he's a tyrant. We're certainly not discussing or diminishing the feelings of tens of millions of you that Donald Trump is unfit to be president. Okay, that's not what we're currently discussing. What we're currently discussing is, will this work? Is this the smart closing argument? Which again, she's making on Tuesday on the Ellipse. It's broader. And again, elsewhere in the focus group, they said, we want to know more about her positions. We want to know less about whether she thinks Donald Trump's a fascist. So
well,
Dan mentioned,
Mark, one more.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Both of you go.
I wanted to make one point, which is one of the things that David Plouffe and other Democrats on the campaign have been saying in the media is it's all about reaching our critical targets. And one of the challenges is getting them to hear our message. One of the things that's concerning, if you want to win this election, because Mark, your point, that is all you should care about right now. What's concerning is they all heard the message. So as I said yesterday, if your goal was that everybody heard that he's a fascist and he made this remark about Hitler, then you are penetrating. The problem is they're just not, it's not resonating. And that is, the challenge.
Sean, let me make a point off of Dan before you, okay? What some Democrats say is, sure, we're not sure this message is great. Sure, our research isn't all that good, that decisive. But what they say is, this is in the news. And we have to take advantage of what's in the news because that's the best way to get coverage, okay? Now, is it in the news organically or was it coordinated with The Atlantic? Someday we'll know. But that's the argument that some make, that it may not be as good, but it's plussed up because of the news. Sean.
So in response to that, the first thing I'll say is what I commented before. Okay, well then use it correctly, right? So this is when I would say that you're not using the information well. They should be saying, great, let's get 5 people for her to say, this is in the news and I have so-and-so on stage with me or sitting next to me that can attest to those kind of things happening. Don't listen to me, listen to them. They're with me right now. And there's enough of these people that there's a handful of them that probably would do it. So they're not using the information the best you can. It's like having a recipe and putting it in the mixing bowl incorrectly. It's not going to come out tasting well. So that's number one. And then the second point that I wanted to make is just we talked about what they're doing down the home stretch. Dan made a good point the other day about the use of surrogates. The end of their campaign looks a lot like Hillary, with a lot of high profile events with celebrities trying to make the case. And I mean, we rolled out Katy Perry in 2016 and I think it failed. Now the other side may have a difference in that, but we looked at it on our side and said, this isn't, so I don't have the data to back that up, but I'm telling you, it's funny how they're now following the Hillary Clinton playbook down the home stretch. Bruce Springsteen telling me how to vote isn't going to sway me. And I think Beyonce will see, but this to me it reeks of 2016 down the home stretch.
Well, and I'll add one other point. And again, to all my fellow Democrats, I want her to win. Like, this is all about winning the vote. But what is really concerning is I got about 50 texts yesterday afternoon because the DSCC was meeting with a bunch of lobbyists to brief them on the home stretch. And one of the things that they said right up front is, we've told our candidates to run their own messaging, right? John Tester is not going to say Trump is a fascist. Sherrod Brown is not going to. So the party is going in different directions. And when you're telling a room full of lobbyists, you might as well tell Politico and Mark Halperin and everyone else, like, we don't believe in this messaging. And that is what is going out all over Washington, D.C.
And it's an asymmetry because every Republican candidate is running on the same thing that Donald Trump is. And again, we're just telling you the reality of what's going on. The asymmetries matter. Now, we've talked about Bruce Springsteen, talked about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton went on CNN and she said Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday is like Hitler's rally, the Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. And she didn't use the word deplorable. But if you say Trump is Hitler, some Republicans are arguing, and some Democrats acknowledge, doesn't seem like you're being particularly showing a presumption of grace towards people who are voting for Donald Trump. Okay, here is Bruce Springsteen. Play Bruce Springsteen from last night's rally.
Donald Trump is running to be an American tyrant. He does not understand this country, its history, or what it means to be deeply American. And that's why November 5th, I'm casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Okay, again, Donald Trump has said and done some horrible things. And my heart breaks for the tens of millions of you who see that he might win and wonder what that means about your relationship to America. I truly, it's such a high priority for me emotionally and professionally. But to hear surrogates like Hillary Clinton and Bruce Springsteen and the candidate herself say that the Republican nominee is a fascist is beginning to insult some of his supporters. Sean.
Yeah, he's going to start running Born to Run Away. That was dark Bruce, man. I mean, that's not an inspiring message a couple weeks out. He should be talking about getting out to vote. We've got this. So much is on the line. I love her. Here's her positive qualities. That to me tells you, again, we keep hearing these messages. They're on their heels. That doesn't inspire confidence in the final days.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, my social media feed has been filled the last week with this reference to the Nazis at MSG back in the 1930s. And I just keep saying to everybody, if you want to win the election, firing up our own side is just a hard way if that's the only thing you're really doing.
By the way, Mark, you mentioned the other day, part of the reason they're talking about what they are on the left is because of what's in the news. They are building this MSG event up Sunday, 4:00. Now it's going to get more and more coverage. I mean, they're doing exactly what Trump wants, which is to make this the most massive earned media event. So, you know, they're making it bigger, and more people are going to cover it, and more people are going to respond to it. So they've literally helped him.
For all of you who wish to get into the conversation, and many have your hands up, many of you are repeat customers, which we love. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform. If you're in the chat on two-way or YouTube, please, peace, love, and understanding. This is not, as upset as people are, as tense as it is, this is not a platform for crap, okay? And Trump supporters watching Bruce Springsteen, spare us your indignation about public rhetoric that insults other people. Okay, spare us, not just your candidate.
Yeah, I mean, can I, Mark, to your point, because this is something that I hear with Democrats all the time. If Harris is elected, she's a communist, she's going to destroy America. Like, I think there's a part of the Democratic Party that so wants this fight because they feel like we have been told that if we win and we're in charge, we are destroying America. And so they want to, you know, eye for an eye here with this rhetoric.
Spare us your indignation. Nonetheless, in the end game, right now, when you've got one side that believes it's winning and one side that's worried, at least, that it's losing, the Trump people watch everything that the Harris people do, and they look for things that worry them. They look for new ads or new messages or new events. And they say, well, that could really threaten us. Okay? I don't hear that from Mar-a-Lago about a Friday night rally for abortion rights. Beyonce, who's known, again, Joy. I don't know how they're going to tonally handle that rally. Figure it out. They're not concerned about Michelle Obama on a Saturday coming this late. I'm just saying we're just continue to look for the asymmetries. Okay.
Mark,
yeah,
one quick point on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So she's got this big event planned on the mall where Trump held his January 6th rally. If what we're hearing and seeing is true, and they go scorched earth on that day, I have a feeling that this could totally backfire on them. That instead of trying to get people to say, remind them of January 6th, it backfires on their messaging, and people are saying, that's not what we want to hear right now. And she ends up turning off more people than bringing them on board.
Yeah.
I disagree on that. I actually think that Elizabeth thing is very smart. Like, because the message speaks for itself. The last time he was here, X happened.
Yeah.
Right. That is a stunning visual, I think. That I
right, but do you go over the top, right? And this is my point, though, is that if you take right, and so I guess the point I'm making, if you take the Springsteen surrogate language and then put that on the mall, you're going to get the same reaction that you got from the focus group, which is, okay, bridge too far, guys. Like because your point, Dan, is absolutely right. They know it already, so it's like she answers the woman question perfectly, which is, I don't need to campaign. You see, I'm a woman, right? If it's understated, they're going to take this too far, and I think jump the shark.
Okay. Last thing I'm going to say before we go to your questions. And again, please raise your hand if you'd like to get in it. Early vote. Okay. Still going on. I believe I'm going to say precise and uncontroversial things about the early vote, which is where we are. Okay. Number one, we don't know why Republicans are outperforming what everyone expected. We don't know why. It could be all moving election day votes, but it does represent some combination of Republican enthusiasm about the election. Like, they're on it. I want to vote the first day. Belief in voting early, and some of the mechanics of the Trump campaign. And I'm increasingly suspicious that the Trump campaign has a secret plan to turn people out that applies to election day too, that's more efficient than the Keystone cops that we've been hearing about. Okay, that's number one. And Democrats are not rushing. Now, it could be they're going to vote early eventually in the late early vote, but they're not rushing as much as Republicans. Number two, Democrats have a problem with young black men. You see that in the early vote. That's just a reality. They haven't solved it yet. Number three, Democrats are reliant on young people to vote, whether it's early or on election day. That's a risky bet. We all know relying on young people to vote is riskier than relying on older people to vote. Four, if Democrats win, it'll be because of women. And good news for them is women are voting here in big numbers in the early vote. And lastly, the only way Democrats are going to win, if this keeps up at all, even close to where we are, and there have been in some states in the last couple of days improvement from where we started, but if this keeps up, Democrats are going to have to do better on election day than they've done lately. Okay, they can do it, and they've got Jen O'Malley Dillon and David Plouffe and other people. They could do it, but that's just a truth that they're going to have to overperform on election day to match Republican overperformance on early vote. I believe all those things are uncontroversial, and they're of a piece with what continues to be strong Republican early vote. Okay, you guys want to comment on that, or we can go to questions?
Let's go to questions. Dan,
I'll yeah, let's go to questions.
All right. First question. A Trump supporter, trying to get him to turn on his camera. See if we can get him to turn on his camera here. Speaker Gingrich, can you turn on your camera? Try one more time. He's got his hand up.
That would be the voice of optimism for Democrats.
Yeah. We'll come back to him. Natalie, welcome in. Having trouble here. Guys, I don't know. All right, here we go. Natalie, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Hi, everyone. I am in Tennessee, and I am supporting Trump, and I'd like to say Trump/RFK because I'm a big RFK supporter. I've got young kids. I wanted to say this is my first time voting in Tennessee. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I need to take a deep breath.
Relax, all good. Take your time.
This is my first time voting in Tennessee. I moved from California, and my hope for elections is much better here in Tennessee because everything feels so secure here. There's voter ID. I have a registration card. Early in-person voting is great. There's tons of participation. There's not random drop boxes in the middle of parks that people can just put their ballot in. I voted in person in California many times with no one ever checking my ID. So I just feel like if this is the way forward, Tennessee, if there are many states like Tennessee, I have a lot more hope. I I just wanted to respond. I saw Michelle on yesterday who felt very discouraged by a possible Trump win because she was a gay person in New York. And I just really feel for her and for people like her. And I appreciate this platform because I think it gives us an opportunity to speak in a way that maybe we can't with family and friends because people get so heated. But I just wanted to give her a perspective from another side, from somebody who has two young kids. My kids are 6 and 3. And I just feel like I'm a Christian. I view things differently. I have concerns about Kamala saying that she won't even give abortion restriction, like religious freedoms, to Catholic hospitals. She just doesn't seem willing to put a pin on it at all and really say where she stands and what she believes in. So for people like me who I wouldn't even consider myself pro-life, I think I'm pro-choice in the fact that I believe in rape, incest, and life of the mother. So I think that has to make me pro-choice. But there are other things that us mothers are thinking about, like the life expectancy of my children is less than my own life expectancy. And I see Trump and RFK coming out and talking a lot about food and regenerative farming and all of that thing. And it's like, I see my kids in classes with other kids with chronic illnesses that didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I'm just wondering who's paying attention to that. And I look at women's sports, and as a woman with a daughter, it's like I have a very hard time backing a party who is okay with allowing men in my child's space and providing puberty blockers to little girls and boys whose frontal lobes aren't developed. Like, I hear Michelle, she has trans friends and she feels very concerned for their safety. And as an adult, I totally respect someone making that decision, but I have to think about my children with my vote. Like, they can't vote, they're little. And I just feel so passionately about their safety and their protection. And my friends in California would say, well, what if your daughter needs to get an abortion? I am more concerned about my daughter not getting raped going out for a run than I am about my daughter getting an abortion, which I hope I can have a good conversation with my daughter about that. So that being said, my question is really for Sean. I'm just wondering, I'm hearing a lot about there being 30 plus million Christians who are going to sit this election out. And I'm wondering what is being done to sort of turn out the evangelical base. And I understand that not all evangelicals are for Trump. I was really turned off by Trump after 2020, and it's taken a long time for me to sort of pull the trigger back on him. And I would say that RFK did a lot in helping me to do that. But I am concerned that people are just going to sit this out and we're going to go in a direction that scares me for my kids.
Sean.
Yeah, great question. Ralph Reed and his organization are spending a ton of time specifically targeting evangelical voters, and there are some other organizations doing it as well. I think if you're not in a battleground state, you might not see it as much. So, but there are organizations that are doing it, and I think it's a very valid concern because some of President Trump's comments on life have given some pause to people who are passionate about the issue. So I will say, I've always told people, look at his record for 4 years. He was staunchly pro-life. He defended the unborn. He promoted a lot that is very helpful to the cause. So if I had to count on something, that would be it. And I think that what he did for the cause with the judges and everything else was fantastic. But let me just ask you a question. If RFK was still in the race, would you vote for him?
I don't know. I feel like not being in a swing state, it would be a lot easier for me to say, like, yes, in Tennessee, I would vote for him. In California, I would vote for him. That's a different question if I'm in Pennsylvania or Arizona or Nevada. I just really like his message. I think he's a lot more professional. So
Right.
I would say there's probably a 60-40 chance that I would pick him over Trump.
Okay.
Natalie, I'm so grateful to you for coming on and talking and for speaking so supportively of the person who was on yesterday, who you disagree with about plenty of stuff, including who to vote for. That's a big part of what this platform's about. And again, don't hear stuff like that very much in our society. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you guys
Thanks,
for this
Allie.
platform and everything. I really appreciate you, and I enjoy this program so
Good job,
much.
by the way.
All right.
You
Thank
did
you.
great.
Come back regularly, please. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to call on another Trump supporter just because he happened to show up and we want to hear what he has to say. But we're going to two Harris people next. So if you've got your hand up and you're a Harris supporter, do something to signal you're a Harris supporter. Be creative, and we'll get to two Harris supporters next. Okay? Mr. Speaker, thank you for coming. We didn't ask you to come. You're just like this community, and we appreciate that. So glad you're here. We'd love to hear what's on your mind after you unmute.
So am I unmuted now?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know I love you three, and I have enough respect. I watch as many, Chris and I both watch as often as we can. But I do think you're a little caught up in the politics of politics. And I just want to make 3 points about this. Going to the ellipse does not put any groceries in any working class refrigerator, nor does it put any gasoline in any car tank. In that sense, it completely misses normal, everyday, non-political Americans. Second, when somebody goes to McDonald's, which 87% plus, as you pointed out, Mark, the 7% ashamed to admit it, go to every year, and then goes to the Steelers game, and the crowd, there's a spontaneous chant, USA Today, USA Today. Now, I was thinking, what would the chant be if Kamala went? And I think it would be, go away, go away. And my point is simple. She's going to try to convince people who chant USA Today and go to McDonald's that this guy is a dangerous proto-dictator modeling himself on people like Hitler. That is, I think, it works perfectly on the left because they already believe it. They can gather together and chant and feel good. I think it's hopeless. Third, Calista and I are going to Madison Square Garden. We are not Nazis. We are not reliving 1939. They have set Trump up. I don't know if he'll do it, but they have set Trump up to turn that into a celebration of America that is positive and happy and the opposite of the Nazis, and make her look like an idiot. And you're right. In typical Trumpian fashion, having gotten everybody to watch him at McDonald's, he has collaborated with Kamala to guarantee that Sunday's rally will be one of the most watched political events in American history. And all he's got to do is be happy and just, say, look, I'm the guy that provided a lot better for 4 years, and I'll provide a lot better for 4 years. I don't know what this nutcake is talking about. So that's just my view, but it just seems to me there are these larger historic patterns that are way beyond clever campaigning.
Yeah. There's a very important interview that Jason Miller, President Trump's communications director, did with Politico, in which he may be taking a victory lap a little too soon, but he runs through some of the other things besides McDonald's and the football game that President Trump has done, the podcasts, a golfing video, his granddaughter at the convention, to humanize him. And we've talked about that here and raised the point that people think there's no way to get people to think anew about Donald Trump. There is, at least on the margins, and all those things were not done by accident. They were all done with an eye towards doing exactly what you said, Mr. Speaker. If you were Mar-a-Lago, what were the 3 biggest worries you'd have about the race right now be?
Whether or not it'll be stolen, first of all, because as you know, I said as early as 1973, you have to win by at least 4% before the Democrats will steal it. Well, that my view of that has not changed. I think Philadelphia, it's harder to steal because you now have young black males who are for Trump. And I think that changes. But that'd be my first real concern. My second concern would be whether or not I can get the vast number of low propensity voters who used to be Democrats and are now Republicans, at least in terms of generational patterns. Can I really get them to vote on election? Can I match election day having already overmatched the pre-election day vote? Would be a major concern. And the third would be, as you've pointed out correctly over and over again, when you have the entire media establishment bitterly opposed to you. And if after Sunday it sinks in that Madison Square Garden was a huge success and that he's rolling to victory, what are they going to do? I mean, if you're Trump, you have to think they will do literally anything to stop him. And they're smart people and they have huge resources. So I would worry about the late October, early November surprise.
Do you think the last election was stolen?
I think the last election was totally rigged.
Was it stolen?
Totally rigged.
Was
It
it
was rigged,
stolen?
it was rigged
You
when they
said-
cut off the New York Post.
Yeah,
It was
no,
rigged when the intelligence officers took. Okay,
but you
prefer-
said no.
I use
there's
the
a
word
difference.
stolen because do I believe it's possible for big city machines to steal votes? Do I believe it's possible for people, as they did in Minnesota one year, to suddenly find an entire box full of ballots in the trunk of a car after the election? Sure, of course I did.
Did big cities steal votes to help Biden win in 20?
I don't know. Look.
Is there evidence? There's a difference between 51 intelligence officers and Silicon Valley. There's a difference between those things well, that's rigged. But you said one of your worries about this election was that it would be stolen. And there's no evidence that I know of that.
Well, look, Mark, you and I are just going to disagree. I've been in this business longer than you have. I actually directly dealt with people who stole elections, and I watched them do it.
Tell me the last election. Tell me the last presidential election that was stolen.
When we were in the White House and everything was going great, and suddenly about 11 o'clock at night, state after state stopped counting. From that moment on, I assumed it was rigged. I assumed the answer was Trump ain't going to win. Now, you may be correct. And maybe in places where judges, by the way, didn't rule against the substance, they ruled against the procedure.
That's not always true.
That's I don't believe you contribute to having confidence in this election if you conflate Silicon Valley and 51 intelligence officers with evidence-free allegations that the election was stolen by big cities.
Look, when the Justice Department interferes in Virginia in order to stop them from making sure that no illegals vote, and we can go through a whole list of things that are going on right now. You and I just disagree, and I don't think it's because I'm paranoid. It's because I have a lifetime of experience watching the Democratic machine in close races, including, for example, stealing Indiana 9th in 1984, literally stealing it. It wasn't close. So my view is, you asked me what I would worry about. What I would worry about is whether or not, in desperation, at the last minute, because they have nothing left, they are prepared to do that. And I hope they're not. But I look at Detroit, I look at Philadelphia, I look at Phoenix. It strikes me that and I look at the number of people who have been registered without photo ID and in many cases without citizenship. All those things worry me. You asked me what I worried about. I mean, I understand. Agree with me.
I'm happy to have you put it on the list. I just don't want to conflate a lot of the things you listed, including potentially stealing a House race, with the notion. I mean, I think the words are pretty clear in their meaning.
It wasn't potentially it was theft.
The difference between stealing election and an improper doing improper things, which you've listed some of which you and I agree on a lot of things. 51 intelligence officers, Silicon Valley. That's different than saying there's bosses in Philadelphia who say, how many votes do we need? And let's get them. I don't begrudge you being suspicious of that. I just want to make clear that in 2020, there's no evidence that thing happened. That's the only point I was making.
I don't want to relitigate 2020, but I would tell you that anybody who is not worried about people without any vote, any ID, people who may well not be American citizens, the whole range of things going on, the Justice Department filing suits to block states from cleaning up their rolls. You may not think any of that's suspicious. As a Republican, having dealt with the Democratic Party my entire career, and by the way, Indiana was stolen. It wasn't supposedly stolen. It was stolen, and Leon Panetta did it. I was there. It was the first great breakthrough in the Republicans deciding I had to be their leader because they were so enraged by the way it was done. So I'm just saying, if I don't think it will happen. I think Trump will win by too big a margin. But if we were down to the last 500 votes, I'd be really worried.
The only reason I used the language I did in Indiana is because I'm familiar with the case, but I don't know the facts. So I didn't want to assume you were right. Let's end on a lighter note. What are your fond memories of attending events previously at Madison Square Garden? You ever been to
I've never attended one. Listen, this will be my first
You've
time.
never been to Madison Square Garden?
I've never been to Madison Square Garden.
Do you know it's the world's most famous arena?
Best arena.
I know, but we lead a very boring life.
You never came to one of the Billy Joel monthly concerts?
No.
You never saw
This is
Bill Bradley play?
This is my great opportunity to finally go to an iconic American place to watch an iconic American politician. It'll be fun.
All right. I live about a mile away. I love going there. It's kind of crappy. Just don't get your hopes up. It's like one of the oldest, retrofitted arenas in America. So you'll enjoy it, but
I'll be happy anyway.
all right. Thank you for coming. We'll see you on Sunday.
All right.
All right. As I said, we're going to 2 Harris supporters. Raise your hand, your physical hand, if you got your hand up and you're a Harris supporter. All right. Here we go.
MSG is not a dump.
Normally, it is a total dump.
Bolton.
Normally, we just call on people
tonight.
random, but I think in the end game here, we're going to need a little more effort at parity.
I did not want to cut off the former speaker, but I do want to just say on this platform, it is not true that those cases were thrown out on procedural stuff. That is just, it's been said a lot recently.
Some were,
but not.
Yeah,
all
there's standing
90.
issues.
Mr. K, how do you pronounce your first name? I don't want to get it wrong.
I'm Jay.
Jay. We can. Jay, welcome in. Thank you for your patience. You ever been to Madison Square Garden?
I have actually, yeah.
What have you seen there?
I'm a Knicks game, but yeah, it is really like old and run down, but it was a fun experience. But
yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for backing me up on that. You're a Harris supporter. Where do you live and what's on your mind, please?
Yeah, I'm 20 years old. I live in Northern Virginia. I've already early voted for her. I have 2 separate questions. So my first question is, do you see any scenario with if Trump were to lose where he would concede and bow out gracefully without contesting an election, even if he were to get completely blown out? That's the first question. And my second question is, if the Democrats were to lose, do you see any scenario where they would try and pull a January 6th with them being in power right now?
Pull a January 6th meaning challenge the results or storm the Capitol. What do you mean by that?
I mean, both, with Harris being, they control the White House right now. So I guess both. What's that?
I will say yes to both, and I hope I'm right about one and wrong about the other. Sean, what do you think? You need a reminder of the questions, or you got them?
No. I think on the Trump front, I think it's going to depend on how close it is. I don't think it's going to matter because I agree with Speaker. And I think this is going to be a very decisive election, despite where the polls are. On the latter, it's interesting the question you're asking, because when I talk to Democrats, hands down, and I'll be interested in Dan's answer to this, but I've been shocked at how many of them said our side. One person last night, a very prominent person who may be watching now, said to me, "We're going to burn the city down." Direct quote. And I was shocked by the reaction of the Democrats. So again, I'm with Mark on this. I hope I'm wrong, but I was shocked to see how many Democrats have sort of believed that that's what's going to happen if Trump wins.
Yeah, as a Democrat, I don't think there will be violence. If Trump wins, I don't think, there may be little bits in pockets and cities here and there, but I do not think Democrats will storm the Capitol. I don't think they will allege that it was rigged. I do worry that given the momentum Trump has, and given the kind of drape measuring that is beginning to break out, that if Trump were to lose, if the environment stays static, meaning there isn't some big surprise that people can point to say, like, James Comey, it was an inflection point, that people will be stunned on the Trump side if he were to lose, because they just feel like this is ours now. And that would make me, a little nervous, but the circumstances are different in 24, Biden as president, than 2020.
Jay, I do think
you asked about.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
No, I think the question was violence, but I will tell you that regardless of violence, I will say that when Trump wins, I feel fairly confident of that there is going to be another Russia intelligence, you name it, fill in the blank. They are not going to claim it was a legitimate win.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the circular firing squad.
There'll be a big circular firing squad, and it's already starting in my inbox. Yep. But Jay, I think if it's close and there's things that lawyers could challenge, the Democratic lawyers will challenge Trump's win. I just think that demand for that will be quite high. Someone made a really interesting point to me today on a related matter, which is there's a value to America for Trump beating Harris as opposed to Trump beating Biden, which is if Trump had beaten Biden, he would double, triple down on saying, of course it was stolen in 20, because of course I couldn't lose to Joe Biden, even though that would be illogical and ridiculous. But that's a silver lining for the country as a whole, again, if that's what happens. Jay, why are you a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, or did you consider voting for Trump?
So not really. I'm more independent. Like if Biden was still in the race, I would probably be undecided. But no, I was happy that they went to Kamala, and I support her. But I'm not like a complete Democrat. No.
If she asked you for advice about how to win here in the final week plus, what would you tell her?
I would just say to be honest and admit mistakes with like to be more open to mistakes she made over the past 4 years and how she would address it for the next 4 years instead of just trying to deflect on answers.
Why do you think, if you have any guess, why do you think she's deflected the way she has?
I mean, all politicians, I mean, no one wants to admit they're wrong. I mean, or that they were wrong. So, yeah, it's easier to say that it's easier just to deflect on it than just to say, you know, I made a mistake on this issue.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Jay,
can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Before we talked a lot about Black men as a constituency voting for either with her, not. So I'm going to play the role of Chris Simmons for a moment. How is your peer group? Are people voting for Trump that you didn't surprise or that surprised you, or is that something that's not consistent with what you see?
Like I'm on a college campus in Northern Virginia, so everyone I know is all supporting Harris. I have family in the area, family in Georgia, friends I know, pretty much all supporting Harris or undecided. So I would say it's kind of overblown. I don't really see a major shift compared to 2020 or 2016 with my own peer group. So
yeah. Okay. Jay, how'd you find out about the morning meeting in two-way?
For YouTube recommendations, just got it randomly. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're grateful to you for coming and for speaking out, and please come back and see if you get 25 of your friends to join us.
Good luck to your commanders.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah. RIP previous ownership. Michael, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell everybody you're a Harris supporter, unless you lied, you're a Harris supporter, right? Tell everybody where you live and what's on your mind, and thank you for joining.
Thanks, Mark. I live in New Jersey, where my vote is less than persuasive, but I am definitely a Harris supporter. By way of background, I always had considered myself sort of a moderate Republican and a George Bush, H.W. Bush type of Republican, and I've become a never Trumper. It seems that the Republican Party has gone in a completely different direction, and so I find myself being an ardent Harris supporter. I do have a question about why the Harris campaign has been advancing this fascist argument so strongly, when it really does seem to me, based, Mark, not only on your focus group, but other evidence that I'm hearing about, that message isn't really resonating to persuade people. I wonder if the real answer is that they're not trying to persuade people. Maybe they don't think there are that many persuadables out there, but they're doing it to drive the vote of the base. And could that be the reason that they're actually going about this rather than trying to persuade?
I'll give you three reasons why they're doing it, and I've sort of touched on them. One is it's in the news, and they think that helps them because that means it's going to kind of expand out beyond their own efforts. Two is there's obviously some research in the Biden-Harris world that says this works. It's what Joe Biden was running on, and his team was not as maybe as poll-driven, as data-driven as every campaign I've ever covered, but they weren't indifferent to the research. And so there's some evidence that it works, not just for the base, but for a broader audience. And then lastly, remember, they have two other closing messages. They have reproductive freedom and they have the economy. And those two things are meant to reach beyond the base. So there's nothing wrong with the campaign having a base closing argument, even if that's primarily what it is, but also having our other arguments to reach other folks. Dan.
I think you said it well, Mark. I think the only thing I would add is they got as far as they could trying to close the gap on the economy, immigration, foreign policy. Some of these issues, like, let's be honest, she has changed her positions without explaining them. She doesn't want to talk about Israel and Ukraine and things that are sticky within the party. And so I think they pushed those boulders as far as they could get them. It was obvious in those interviews the last month how kind of uncomfortable she was and how much she kind of victory became not making a mistake. And they went on, this allows them to be on offense, to fire up the base. I do believe that they believe this resonates in the suburbs with a kind of like yourself, kind of country club, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush Republicans. And they think this is, along with abortion, the two best grounds that we have to be on offense down the home stretch.
Yeah. Let me say one other thing while Sean finishes sneezing. It
came out of the focus. I was just going to say, God bless you, Sean.
It came out of the focus.
I muted myself, I think.
You did. That was very elegant. It came out of the focus group last night. And this is why I love focus groups, because one person said it, but it really stuck with me and it makes a lot of intuitive sense. This person said, I wish she would talk about other issues with the passion, conviction, and authenticity that she talks about abortion and she talks about Trump as a fascist.
Sure.
And so one argument for her doing it is, to this person's ear, and I think a lot of our ear, she's not reciting memorized lines, or at least not completely, when she talks about this stuff. She feels it in her gut. You go to any living room in Westwood or in Nob Hill, and they'll feel this passionately. And so I think that's another reason why Joe Biden did it, for sure, right? That's why he said he ran in the first place. And I think it applies to her as well. Sean.
Yeah, I just to go off what Dan was saying, a lot of times when the data comes back from the polling, in terms of you test all these messages, does this make you more likely or less likely to vote for this candidate, blah, blah, blah. You can get the menu and the candidate looks at it and says, well, I don't feel comfortable with that, or I don't like that, or I'm not, if it's an issue thing, if you said the following about the issue, this is what would happen. And she might say, great, but I don't like that issue, or I don't want to get further into this. And so this becomes the lesser of five evils, or the best one of the bunch. So part of this sometimes is what the menu looks like and what options you have.
Yeah, I mean, think about as a voter, when Harris did that Fox interview, right? She went in there and when she had energy and passion. Why? Because she was indignant about what Trump was going to do. She couldn't believe that Brett Baer was going to let him, get away with the enemies from within, kind of cleanup that Trump was trying to do. She has passion. She leaned forward in her chair, and Democrats were like, hallelujah, you're not a robot. But then when it comes to, sympathy for the Palestinians, or what about kids, Jewish children who don't feel safe, it is a much more, kind of closed vest. Put her where she's comfortable.
Michael, gambling's legal in Jersey. Who's going to win? What are the odds you give Harris of winning?
A week ago, I actually thought that she would win by a small amount. I'm now frustrated and think that Trump is likely to win by a small amount.
What's turned?
Can I just add one more thing,
yeah,
Mark,
of course,
before I run?
Yeah.
And it has to do with Sean. When you were press secretary, I was not only a never Trumper, I was a never Spicerer. And I can't tell you how much you have persuaded me of your wisdom during, watching the morning meeting for all these months now. You're a thoughtful man, and I didn't think you were. So thank you for showing that side of you.
Appreciate the kind words, Michael. Thank you very much.
Michael, it's actually the raison d'etre of the morning meeting is to get Democrats to fall deeply in love with Sean Spicer, which they thought could never happen. I hear it every day. The ones I like the most is when they say, Mark, I'm so mad at you. And I say, what did I do? They said, you've made me like Sean Spicer. The dirty little secret is, the dirty little secret is you didn't misread him before. He's actually gotten to be a better person. Michael,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Have a great weekend.
I'm going to clarify one thing. I have zero tolerance for people voting illegally. I'm, as a reporter and a citizen, extremely inquisitive about election fraud, about wrongdoing. I'm familiar with a lot of historical examples. Back when I worked for big news organizations, I spent a lot of time investigating this stuff. I don't take it lightly. And I've been on record many times saying what happened in 2000 with the 51 intelligence officers and the Silicon Valley platforms is outrageous. Just as I say that about Jim Comey, by the way. So I'm against election interference. I'm against the Russians interfering. I'm against illegal voting. I just am also against the loosey-goosey characterization of big cities stealing votes. I'd love to see evidence of it if it's true. The speaker didn't say, he said he was worried about it happening. And that's fine. I just don't like to have the impression left that it happened in 2020, which it might have, but I have seen no evidence of it.
Well, we haven't talked about this, and but it is rich that the Trump campaign has asked for things to be tweaked in North Carolina to accommodate voters in hurricane hit areas. So apparently tweaks during COVID were outrageous and stealing it, but tweaks in North Carolina is being a good citizen.
There's tweaks that Chris LaCivita doesn't like, and there's tweaks that he thinks are essential. All right. Thank you for everybody participating. Again, I love this episode because there was a lot of togetherness, even across party lines. And I'll say again, I feel horrible for the asymmetrical anxiety on the blue side. I really do. It's going to be fine, but this is going to be an important test of the people on this platform and in America. If you win, please think about the feelings, the aspirations, the disappointments of the losers, the losing side, because it's going to be horrible if the winners are just triumphant and ignore. And that goes for both sides, not just one side. Okay. Tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time, be here for the two-way tonight. I think Jonathan Alter is going to be joining us and talk somewhat about his new book, I think, if he can work it out. And there'll be some other people there. And I hope all of you are there, including folks who had their hands up but didn't get called on for this episode. And this weekend, I'll be covering some events. So you'll see me, and we may have some pop-up episodes live from some big events. So stand by for that if you have nothing better to do this weekend. And I say Dodgers in 7. Sean.
When the Red Sox lost, I didn't really care anymore. Anyway, have a great weekend. I'm excited. I'm headed to the border right now, which is a nice thing. And then we've got a great event here in Arizona.
I'm sorry. Does that mean you're going to Taco Bell or something else?
Maybe I'll stop on the way. No, the real border. That's okay. I'll leave my jokes aside for now. But then big event tonight in Arizona.
Okay. And Dan?
I'm going to enjoy Parents' Day here at our oldest school. And then I am back in New York City going to that dump, Madison Square Garden. We're on to the Knicks. All right. Forget baseball. Taking some of the kids to the Knicks home opener tonight. Excited.
Who are they playing?
Pacers, who knocked them out last year in Game 7.
Grudge match. All right. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you at 6 p.m. I'll probably see you at least once over the weekend. And then the three of us will be back Monday morning, last full week of this program pre-election. So thank you all very much. And thanks to the speaker and others who participated.